On the left hand you see applied research we're doing for the private sector. That's pre-competitive research paid by the private sector, sometimes in consortia. I'll have an example of that later on. But determined largely by private sector parties. And in the left hand lower corner you see the same kind of research as on the right side, but then commissioned by private parties. So in essence it looks like it's all blue, it looks like it's one whole, and in a way it is. But on the other hand it's a very clever way for the government to have a research organization but not pay all of it. So they make us earn money on the market. If you look at our total turnover, about 20% is in the lower left corner. And that means that a substantial part of our total costs, our institutional costs, are covered by other parties than the government itself. So the government created this organization and the other applied research organizations to be able to have the knowledge base on this subject at hand, to be able always to use it. It's a strategic subject for the Netherlands. And they have no other choice, because when Deltares was created, all the government scientists, about 150, doing research work on these subjects were brought into Deltares, so they effectively outsourced it. So they have to be able to rely on the presence of this knowledge base and our loyalty to the Dutch government when it comes to being there and having the right level of knowledge and being able to find solutions for the problems they have. But on the other hand, we have to earn a lot of our money on the market and be able to cover costs that way. And earning money on the market is one half of the story. When we go abroad in other countries and we work there, we find problems that we hardly ever meet in the Netherlands. So it gives us an opportunity to do research on subjects that are more or less exotic or on another scale than we are used to in the Netherlands. And this enriches the knowledge base, and so the government profits twice. But not just the government, because these institutes work not only for the government, for the private sector as well. So we have a public function in the sense that our knowledge base is available for everyone, in principle as a first party, the government, but also for any other party in the economy that wants to use the knowledge. And it's free. It's not only free, it's provided to everyone who wants it, and it's tailored to measure. Of course, you have to pay for that kind of work, but it's not a take whatever you want and see what you do with it. No, it's trying to help parties, industry, to really tailor it in such a way that they can make money with it in foreign markets. So it's a clever concept seen from the government side, but it's a fantastic concept seen from the organization side, because it gives us a very special position. In the past, it used to be that private organizations like consultancies were always complaining to the government about the applied research organizations, because they are doing work on their turf, and if they didn't complain about that, they said, well, the work they're doing, we can do that just as well. And now, by creating this larger organization with a broader scope and with a public signature and with knowledge available freely for everybody, you don't hear them say that anymore, because now we have become a provider of one of their most important commodities, being knowledge, instead of being a competitor. Well, that brings me to the golden triangle. This is something that's going to make us rich. It happened before. It's the relationship that has to exist, in our view, between the government, the research, the knowledge sector, and the market, the private sector. If these three parties do not find a way to work together, the work they're doing will always be only half utilized. It's very difficult to learn if you're not willing to share, and it's very difficult to bring the right questions to the market if you don't know what the market is capable of. So you have to invest in these relationships. When we look at how it used to be, you see the top drawing, the government at the top would communicate with the private sector through tenders. And usually the choice was on lowest price. So there was no discussion about what would private sector be capable of delivering, what would they be wanting to deliver, what would be the most cost-effective product to deliver. No, the government commissioned a consultancy to do the design, and the design was brought on the market by tender, and this is what had to be realized. And then, of course, in the private sector, when price is the most important selection criterion, you more or less invite parties to inform each other about what they're doing in one way or another. Or maybe not even inform, but they are looking at each other with binoculars, and they're very, very capable of interpreting the signs. So it's very hard to get the right kind of competition if you do it that way. When you look at the relationship between the research, applied research, and the market, there really was not a relationship. The market complained about, why don't we get the results of research when we need them? Why don't you have the technology we need to solve this problem? Why can't you help us reach our results in a cheaper way? But they only asked that question after they have been commissioned to do the work. So there's no time, there's no connection between the two. The research organizations are very interested to do research on the private sector, on evaluating large projects, for instance. They're very keen on doing that, but they're not commissioned to do that. They have to do it on their own, with their own money. And when you look at the relationship with the government, in history, of course, well, government just threw a bag of money over the wall, and the research organizations pushed a box of reports back. That's about the way they communicated. And they were beautiful reports. Well, if you look at how it's working right now, then in the relationship between the government and the private sector, there are more and more integrated contracts. Design-build, sometimes design-build-maintain. In one or two exotic examples, design-build, finance and maintain. And this forces them to show interest in the other party, to be aware of what the trustworthiness, not just the price, but the trustworthiness of the other party is. Both ways, the trustworthiness of the government as a long-term partner of private sector, and the other way around. So there's more information flowing from the private sector to the government, and there's more asked by the government from the private sector. If you look at research and private sector is starting to become interested in evaluation of projects, in knowing more about the processes they use, improving processes, the connection between the work, the technical work they're doing, and society around it. Because they discover that it's very hard and very expensive to realize projects in an environment where you're not on talking terms with the people around you. In the other direction, the applied research organizations are more and more offering of themselves ideas about improvements in processes and products of the private sector, because they know more about them, because these evaluations have results, and they have recommendations based on that. So the research sector is more and more the active party in this relationship. And if you look at the relationship between government and research organizations, we have, like I said, demand-driven research at the moment. So there's much more influence by the government and the private sector on the research programs. But there's a much stronger drive on the side of the research organizations to provide government with the right knowledge. So what we are doing is we're not just having scientists and like hydrologists and morphologists and such. We have in our organization about 10%, say 85, 90 people from the social sciences and policy analysis. And this is just to ensure that the products we deliver, the knowledge products we deliver, fit in the processes that the government or private sector is in, so that they can use it in reaching their goals. Well, in the future should be a situation where it looks like at the moment we are not too far from that, but these things go up and down, is that there's an alliance between government and the private sector when it comes to large infrastructural works, for instance. And these alliances, profit and loss are shared. So both parties have an interest in defining the work, even on the way, defining the work in such a way that you get the same quality or more for a lower price, because they both profit from a lower price. It used to be that if a contractor was able to win a tender and then execute the work at half the price that was offered, government felt cheated. Well, it's a human reaction, but it's nonsense, of course. That's a party you want to work with again and again, because they are so good at their work that they're able to do what they do at a lower price than any other competitor and still earn a lot of money. So in the future situation, you try to create more relationships like that. Know each other, trust each other, find the strong points, evade the weak points. But in that situation you also need a lot of attention to the element of competition. So the element of competition is concentrated on the first phase, and when you are looking for the party that you want to build a relationship with to do the work, and not so much the work itself. When you look at the relationship between applied science and private sector, what we are the direction we're going to is to form consortia, where the research element is brought into the work of the private sector as a logical part of the total product. Science is always too small to have the leading role, almost always too small to have the leading role in such that kind of project. So this also needs a lot of trust, because the private sector offers in a tender a proposition that includes the research organizations, but it's not always certain when they win the tender that they really do make or really have the research organizations as the intended part of the work. Sometimes their part is diminished or written out of the project as a whole. So this also needs confidence and trust between the parties to be able to invest and know that your investment, when the tender is won, that your investment will bring fruit. And the relationship between the government and the science, the research organizations, in an ideal future situation would be that we have the knowledge ready at the moment that the government needs it. That sounds easy, but it's not, because government is always working on reality as it is perceived, filtered by policy and by politics. All things that don't fit into that area are not part of reality of the government organization. And that means that when there's a change of government or when there's a disaster and there must be a change of policy, there's an enormous outcry for knowledge, but the knowledge has to be created, and it takes years to do that. So that creates a situation where everybody is disappointed, where you get a discussion about the use of applied science. What good are they to us? When we need them, they're not there. It's always the same. That's what they say. So we, as a research organization, have to be so much in connection with the government and with the way the government sees the problem, and with society and the problems society experiences, that we have done most of the work before the government reaches the point where it says, now we need the knowledge. You can't always score 100% there. That's obvious, but you can get a long way, because it's not rocket science. I mean, if you read the papers, if you talk to people, you know what's going on. Even if the government says it's not opportune at the moment to change our policy. So even in demand-driven research, that's actually what I'm telling you. Demand must be driven a bit too. So we try to shape demand in such a way that the demand-driven research is in time for new subjects when it comes to policy.